Welcome to In Progress, a podcast to help you grow and learn how to become a better version of yourself. Now, here's your host, Michael Cirigliano.
Welcome, everybody, to In Progress with Michael Cirigliano. We got special guest on today, Jake Zimmer, real estate investor, entrepreneur, you name it. So what makes you say that the smaller units are the way to go for you? Like, why do you go that route instead of just stacking money and going for those 10, 15 unit apartments?
So, I'm real big. Like I said, I really kind of wanted to learn a lot of this stuff myself. I would love to be a property manager. I just really wanted to learn a lot of it myself. I wanted to learn how to fix a toilet or paint, right? Fix concrete, man. I just learned how to fix concrete. I learned how to reseal concrete. Like, I wanted to learn how to do that stuff. 16 unit properties, 15, you're not doing that stuff. You're hiring a property manager
100%.
To do that stuff. And, all that stuff, man, you need a lot of money or you need a lot of connections. And with me moving so much over the last few years for work, I don't really have those connections in one state specifically, right? I have a couple friends in New York that I might be able to invest with, a couple in South Carolina, maybe one or two here in Arkansas. But nothing where like we could really all come together and build like a 15, 16 unit property together and know what we're doing at the same time, right? I think that myself, getting one or two properties, first tenant, I learned what to look for in that first tenant. Imagine if I had jumped into 16 units and I had 16 of those the first time because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Or you'd be fucked.
Yeah, I'd be a lot more than like $6,000. Talk about probably about $200,000, right?
Right, exactly.
So I think just the experience, plus I'm making money on it, right? And if you don't make money on the first one, which a lot of people say they don't, you're not losing as much. Maybe you're losing $5 or $6 or $7,000 compared to $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. So I think just kind of getting a little bit of that experience, starting to network with people and knowing some of that stuff, 4 units, 5 units, and then starting to go into the big boys. I just think it helps a lot more people. But, some people jump right into 16 units. They usually jump in with a partner who's used to it and they do fine. I didn't really have that available. When I was 23, 24, I didn't have friends that were doing 10 unit apartments or 16,
right, exactly.
any real estate friends, so it's a lot harder for me to find that person at that age. My friends were still working at like McDonald's and shit. So
right. Right, exactly. And that's the thing too with Grant. Grant doesn't talk about the negative side of any of it. Grant's basically just like, go for the 15, 20 unit apartments and make your money, because you won't have as many, like one vacancy on a 16 unit doesn't affect you as much as one vacancy on a duplex. And that makes sense.
Yep.
But he doesn't talk about the dark side to all of this, where like you can have 15 bullshit tenants. You can have even 10 bullshit tenants. And that's 10 times the headache that you dealt with your one.
Yeah. And you have no clue how to handle those headaches. So it takes you 4 or 5 months to even start an eviction like me,
Exactly.
Versus once you've done it one or two times, you're ready that first month. Or as soon as shit's late on the 5th now, I'm getting that letter ready. That's what I do now. And my tenants even know it. My tenants in New York will still text me. If they can't pay till after the 5th, she'll text me immediately and say, I know you're gonna have to send the eviction notice, which it's fine. We understand. We'll get your money for you.
Oh, so you got them trained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they know. But I didn't do that with the first one, right? So
exactly. So do you have properties that you rent out in Arkansas or no?
Duplex that I rent out right now. Yeah, I just finished getting one of the sides rented out. Now it was one that I was fixing up, so it took me a couple months to get it all fixed up.
How did you go about that? You didn't go through FHA, obviously, because you rented it out immediately, right?
No, yeah. So I went through FHA at first, and lived there at first, and then, oh man, I bought it with tenants in place at first.
And FHA is okay with that?
Yeah. In one side, I lived in the other side though.
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
So, I'm working on renting this side out right now. Mm-hmm. Right. So FHA was Same thing. So you can buy up to 4 units, like I said, with FHA, but you do have to agree to live in one of those units for at first. So that's what we did. And so I bought it with a tenant in place already. And that was the one side that she kind of trashed, where I just had to end up fixing it up. So yeah, I mean, you can do, and I didn't think I'd actually get approved for FHA because my house in New York is still an FHA loan. That loan is still through an FHA with the bank. I thought, I had this misconception you can only have one in your entire life, or even at a time, which isn't the case. So since I was not necessarily forced to move, but since I moved out of state due to work, I was able to get another FHA loan here in Arkansas.
Okay.
So I was extremely confused because I thought you're only allowed one FHA, or because I thought it was like the first time home buyers at the same time. So I talked to the guy and I was like, I know I'm not going to be approved for FHA. He's like, no, man, you're good. He's like, as long as you can prove. So I had to go back and I had to find my offer letter, or one of my offer letters. So I sent them the one from Arkansas, and I basically just had to show them that I had moved due to work. So it wasn't really by choice. So I had moved due to work. That's why I still have the FHA house in New York. Some people, they might make you refinance that FHA loan into a regular loan, depending on like your institution or your bank.
Right. So what's the difference between so with the one in Arkansas, did you live in it for a year or no?
Yeah.
You did. Okay. So what's the difference between an FHA and a first-time home buyer? To somebody renting a property.
There's not really a difference. Basically, the only difference is how many units your property is. So FHA just means it's government backed. That means if I default as a home buyer, the government will pay the bank. So let's say I owe $200,000 on my house, on the duplex, right? Let's say I default, I don't pay the $200,000. The bank is going to sell this house probably at an auction or foreclose on it, or foreclosure. Let's say they get $180 for it. Since I did FHA, the government will pay the bank the extra $20,000 I didn't pay. Right. So that's all it means is it's government backed. First time home buyer is just a program banks use generally to help the bank show that the buyer can pay on time, or monthly payments of X amount, however much the mortgage will be. And it's usually to help the buyer increase their amount that they can put towards the down payment.
Because they match it to an extent.
Right, exactly. Yeah, usually they'll give some sort of incentive for that buyer to work with them. You know, it might be $200 a month or $300, as long as one, you pay on time, and two, you make the 12 months worth of payments or something like that.
Right.
Now, also usually first-time homebuyers program will go hand in hand with FHA. Most first-time homebuyers are also going to use FHA and the government backing their loan.
Really?
With FHA, you only need to have 3.5% down. Yeah, so it's just way cheaper upfront versus having to put $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 down.
Okay. Now let's say we're going to buy a $100,000 house. If you go through FHA alone, you only need $3,000 of your own money to get that house?
For the down payment, yeah. You're probably also going to have to pay about 5 to 8% in closing costs, which is basically all the lawyer fees, title fees, appraisal fees, the bank's fee. I mean, all that stuff. So, I tell people usually look at 10. If you're doing FHA, look at like 8 to 10% is total what you'd need up front. Because you're going to need, $3,500 just for the down payment, and then probably another 6 to 7 just for the closing costs. Which closing costs can also be partially paid for by the seller too. Right now we're in a buyer's market though, so you probably won't get too many sellers offering too many concessions, because I'm sure they probably have an offer where the buyer's not asking for any closing costs.
Right.
So in a buyer's market, it's a lot harder to get sellers to give us money versus it's a seller's market right now. So it's a lot harder for us to get them to give me money as a buyer versus in a buyer's market, they might only have 1 or 2 offers in a month. So if I ask them for $5,000 to buy their house, they'll give me that $5,000.
Right.
So, right.
So what's like the perk of doing an FHA? The FHA loan sounds like it's just a regular loan.
Yeah, the perk is just a lower down payment. That's all it is.
But you still have to come out of pocket with closing.
Have to come out of pocket for closing costs, yeah. But let's say, okay, so you do a conventional loan on a $100,000 house, right? That's going to be 20% down you're going to have to put down plus closing costs.
Right.
So your down payment's $20,000 plus the 6 or 7 for closing costs. So you're talking $26,000.
Oh.
You can do an FHA loan on that. You're putting 3.5 plus the 6. So you're talking $9,000 or $10,000.
Got you. And then, so then the only difference between the FHA and the first-time home buyer is FHA is doing 3% plus you take closing costs. First-time home buyer is the same thing, but they're going to throw you a little extra monthly.
Yeah, they're usually going to throw you some money out of their own pocket for working with them. And they kind of get you ready for that payment, that $1,000 payment coming out, they kind of get you ready for that.
Right.
Now the difference between conventional and FHA though, you pay more FHA monthly because one, obviously you're putting less of a down payment down. So $100,000 house, you put a $20,000 down payment on a conventional loan, you're paying a mortgage that's $80,000. You put 3.5% down, you're paying a mortgage that's $96,500. Right. And it's over the same amount of time. So that $96,500 over 30 years is a lot more than $80,000 over 30 years.
Right.
So you pay more for your actual mortgage payment, but you also have to pay for what's called mortgage insurance, payment mortgage insurance, I believe it's called PMI. And that's basically the fee that you're paying for the government to back the loan. So it's basically the government's cut or government's interest rate, if you will, on you getting a loan from them.
Okay. So
that's usually about $70 to $100 a month, depending how much your loan is.
So which route would you say for somebody doing it for the first time? So someone who's never bought a house before, which route, if you had to go back, which route would you take if they had time? Which route would you take if they wanted to do it like now?
If you have time, if you have a year, I would do a first-time home buyers program with an FHA loan. Because you can do both.
Okay.
You're going to get 3.5% down, but you're also getting a lot of support and help from the bank. If you don't have time, I'd still go with an FHA loan. Even for people, and it's always going to depend on what you're looking for. Hopefully most people that would listen to this are going to be investors or people who want to make money.
Right.
If you're looking to own your house and live in it for 30 years, put as much money down as you want. That's going to make your payment a lot lower. You're going to pay less in interest over the course of 30 years, whatever. Those people are a very small amount, right? If you're looking to invest and make money, put as little down as you can, right? If you were in the military and you can get a VA loan, you can do 0% down. That's like the greatest thing in the world.
Really?
I tell all my military friends to try to do that. Yeah, you if you're approved, you can do 0% down. And sometimes you get a lot of closing costs paid for as well, too, depending who you bank with. Wow. Yeah, tons of benefits for military.
So it's worth it going overseas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sometimes. But if you're looking to make money, put as little down as you can. Because let's say you put down $20,000 and your payment is, let's say, $100 less a month, right? It's going to look good when you're making your payments and stuff. But if I could have taken that $20,000, maybe put it into another house and now made $400 a month, that $100 I was saving is not worth me making $400 extra on this other house.
Right, exactly.
So people looking to invest and make money, I can take $20,000 or $30,000 and invest it and make a lot more than I'm going to save by putting that into one house.
Right. So you're saying for people investing, it's better to put as little down as possible so that any money you do have, you can invest into other properties that have multiple doors.
Exactly. Yeah. Invest it into other properties, or, I mean, if you do the stock market, I mean, whatever it is you're comfortable investing in. Yeah, absolutely. Do that. Cause the return you'll get by paying $60 less a month in your mortgage, or 80 or 100, 120, That'll be great. You'll pay that $20,000 off in what, I don't know, probably 60 months, 5-6 years.
Right.
Where I could have turned that 20 grand and probably made my money back in a year or two. You know what I'm saying? So if you're looking to invest, put down as little as possible, as long as you're obviously cash flowing. So, and Grant is huge for this. Don't change the amount you put down in order to be positive in cash flow. You should cash flow if you were able to put 0% down.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you can put 10% down or 3.5% down and make $100 or $200 or whatever, then that should be good. Right. Versus if you put 3.5% down and you don't cash flow, but if you put 20% down and you do cash flow, that's not a good thing.
What? So
right?
for
You
people
should always
listening
be
that don't know
investing.
Grant, what do you mean when you're saying cash flow?
So cash flow is how much cash basically you're receiving each month, right? So my cash flow minus, so there's net and there's gross. Most people go net, right? Gross is $1,300 a month. That's how much I make on rent on that house. Right. $1,300. That's my gross cash flow. Minus expenses, minus the mortgage and shit like that. My net cash flow is about $460 a month on that house.
Okay.
So that's how much I make from my tenants minus all my expenses, the mortgage, all that stuff. So that's my cash flow. So like $460 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So Grant was huge on this. You want to be able to cash flow if you were putting $0 down. If you have to put money into a property in order to cash flow, it's most likely not worth it.
Right.
Like if it's only worth it if you put $30,000 into it, unless you're flipping houses, but that's a whole different game, obviously. Right. If you're putting $30,000 into a house to rent it out to make $100 or $200 a month, it's probably not worth it. You should be able to cash flow if you were putting $0 down.
Okay. So now you said that right now you're making about $450 on your, I'm assuming that you're referring to the New York house?
Yeah. Yep.
When you say, so mortgage and expenses, what expenses are you paying? So I'm assuming utilities is in the tenant's name. What expenses are you paying for?
So my house in New York, I actually do pay for some of the utilities. I pay for water, which is about $20 to $25 a month. And I pay for garbage, which is like $25 a month too.
Okay.
Other than that, they pay for everything else. Now the duplex, that's all in the tenant's name. So my expenses for the house are the mortgage and insurance and all that stuff, which is about $840. The water and the garbage. That's pretty much all the expenses I have there. But I also hold back usually about 5% every month for actual expenses. So that's when I do have to call the plumber or call an electrician or just whoever to fix whatever. I'll usually hold back about 5% for those types of expenses as well.
Okay, just in case.
Yeah. Because some shit's always going to happen. I don't care how new the house is. I don't care who built it. If God himself built it, some shit is going to happen that has to get fixed in that house. Especially in probably the first year, I promise you.
Oh, absolutely. Because you got to go through that bullshit tenant. But so do you have anything in place that's like insurance in case, say, for example, you had a shitty tenant who's just trying to get one over on you and they like get hurt or whatever in the unit. Do you have anything in place where you can take care of that, or are you just like hoping for the best?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually. And I learned actually a lot about that when I bought the duplex here in Arkansas. So my house in New York, I just have single landlord. It's like single landlord / tenancy insurance, mm-hmm. Which basically covers the tenants there in New York. If they get hurt, personal liability, I mean, whatever the case may be. Here in Arkansas with the duplex, I have an insurance policy, but I also have extended personal liability up to, I think I've made it for $500,000. It was like $5 extra a month or $10 a month to go from 100,000 to 500,000. So if somebody gets hurt at the duplex, I'm covered basically up to $500,000 worth of my assets.
Wow. Okay.
So basically what that means is if I didn't have that, for instance, I'd be covered up to $100,000, right? So pretty much if I didn't have that and somebody got hurt and it cost let's say their hospital bills costed more than $100,000 a month, they could start to basically get me to either sell my properties so I could pay them, or take the properties, right? Or something along those lines, depending on how much it was, obviously. So like my house in New York is worth more than $100,000. So let's say I had the liability for $100,000 and somebody got hurt and it cost $500,000 for their hospital bills. I would have been covered for $100,000. The tenant then could have went to and taken my house from New York. There's $130,000 or whatever it's worth, right? Then they could have taken my duplex, which is like, let's say $300,000, like, and it basically will add up.
Okay.
So yeah, so I am basically covered up to $500,000 worth of my own assets. So that covers basically my house. That covers my duplex. If they want anything else, it's basically going to come out of my bank account. But that money is a lot better than them taking property or me defaulting on a loan or something.
Right. Now, I've also heard of instances where people, instead of putting the units and apartments and houses in their name, they'll do it under a business name. Are you doing it under a business name, or are you doing it under your name specifically?
Yeah, so when I bought the duplex, I thought about that because you can do an LLC. So a lot of people will tell you to put things in LLCs, and you really just have to do a research. Like if you're going to look at buying properties, just do your research on LLCs. Just a lot of the research I saw was if you only own a couple properties, LLCs just make it a lot more difficult, especially during tax time. And just with some other areas with getting insurance, getting the loan, things like that. So a lot of people I talked to just really recommended that you just increase your own personal liability insurance. But it's up to everyone. If you have an LLC, you're basically covered. You get an LLC, you get what's called an umbrella policy, and it basically it limits your single house to just that house. So worst case scenario, if something had happened, the tenant could only reach to that house for whatever damages they needed. So, if my tenant got hurt in the duplex, they couldn't ever reach out to the house in New York because that would be under its own business. I basically have no ties to that.
Right.
So I mean, some people recommend that. Some people say once you get to $1 million worth of assets, then you do it. Some people say at 5 units. I don't think I'll do it for the house I'm looking at buying in South Carolina, but I think after that I'll get an LLC for basically all my units so that they're all covered.
So
but right
you would
now,
just put them all under the LLC?
Yeah, so that's another interesting point. Is some people, most people recommend to get an LLC for each property.
Really?
Which is really what usually makes it confusing. Yeah, because you have to open up your own LLC. But at that time, I'm hoping to just have one property with like 8 to 10 units. So it's just going to be one LLC.
Right. So if you were to go back and do it all over again, would you change anything that you did, knowing what you know now?
Absolutely. Where do I start, right? The first thing I would do, if anyone's looking to buy a house, and I mean, I'll have friends text me all the time about buying houses and stuff like that. And the biggest thing I try to convince people is if you're looking just for even a little bit of extra money on the side or for your rent to be paid for, please buy a duplex or a 3-plex or a 4-plex. If you don't want to do that much work, please just buy a duplex and you can pretty much get your mortgage covered for it. And you're basically living for free. So if I could go back, that's 100% what I would do. I would have looked for a duplex. That way, the year that I did live in that house, my mortgage would have been paid for, or at least pretty close, right?
Right.
versus instead of paying $850 a month for my mortgage, I could have rented one side out for $800 and I'm paying $50 a month for rent. So if I could change one thing, the first thing I would change is start off in a duplex at least. People are like, I don't want to live next to anyone or whatever. I've been living in apartments, for a big majority of my life. I've always lived next to someone. It doesn't really bother me.
Right.
But if you can stick it out for a year, I tell you, it's worth it. You gain a lot of experience. Plus, usually if you as the landlord are living next door, you're going to get a better tenant than living away from the property.
So you let them know, because that was another thing that I thought about too, because everybody says, go, if you're going to do a smaller property, go for a duplex. But my biggest concern in that is, if they know the landlord is living next door, is that like a weird thing, or do you not say anything? Or is it like, no, the authority is next door, so be prepared.
The authority is next door. No, man, I tell everyone, because that's going to weed out at least 20% of those trap house people, right, that are trying to just come in and ruin everything. It's just going to weed them out. So I'll have, like, when I was trying to rent out this side, I'll have people message me all the time. Oh, it's a duplex, so who lives next door? And as soon as I say the landlord or something like that, they're like, oh, yeah, no, I'm okay. Like, immediately that just was like, okay, well, you were obviously planning on doing something that a landlord shouldn't know.
Right.
Whether it's drugs or whatever, you just have a lot of people in or whatever the case may be. So I'd prefer them to know and not want to live next to the landlord.
Right. So it's not like a weird thing or anything. It's almost like a good. So even if for example, now that you're not living there, do you still say that, like, just to weed it out, or are you just like, no, it's this person?
I mean, it's still weird. It's even weird living next to those people. I'm very like, I just don't act like you're here. So even if I see you outside, I just kind of put my head down and I act like I don't see you. It is kind of weird living next to them. But I'm the same way in an apartment too. Like, when I see people I live next to in an apartment, I just, nope, you're not here. It's like kind of a very New York mentality in the South. Yeah,
100%.
And Southerners, man, they're always like, hey, how's your day going? I'm like, it's all right. And I just keep it moving.
How's your day going? No.
It's definitely a little weird. Yeah. Just no. Just nothing else. Just no. Did you pay rent? Right? just make sure you pay my rent. But I mean, it's not that weird. Hey, if you want to, I usually won't say anything. Like at the landlord's living next door, because I'm not gonna lie, they're gonna see a landlord coming over or whatever. So
right.
But that kind of brings me to my next point is I've also started where I have to come in the house every 6 months. So I usually will change the smoke detectors every 6 months. I don't think there's actually really anything else that I do, to be honest.
That's honestly smart, though. It keeps them straight. If you're coming in every 6 months, they can't really do any stupid shit.
Yeah, and they can't make things a mess, or if they do, they clean it up when I'm coming. I also, and I do all this myself. I spray the outside with pesticides every beginning of summer, and then at the end of summer again. So that kind of, I don't go inside the house, but it brings me close enough to where they're kind of like, all right, let's clean up a little bit, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
My house in New York, I go up there once a year, usually at the end of summer, to clean out the gutters and stuff like that before winter.
Right.
So, just little things like that, anything to kind of get by the house. My duplex, I mow the lawn. So, I'm pretty much always there during the summertime, at least once or twice in a month. So anything to stay close to the house, keep an eye on it, keeps everyone on their toes.
Is there, so in your whole journey, is there, what advice would you give to somebody getting ready to go into the real estate investment journey? Because it is a big step. I mean, for me, before talking to you, this was like something, I mean, this is the reason why I've toyed with the idea for 6 fucking years, because I've just been scared shitless. It just seems like such a big thing. And the way you're talking about it is like, no, it's really not. Like, you're just making it out to be bigger than it is. So someone who's about to go into the real estate investment genre or whatever, AKA me, would you give any advice? What advice would you give that person that's about to jump in?
The biggest advice I can tell anyone, man, is just do it, right? Just go jump in. You know, you're not going to find many pieces of real. No, let me rephrase that. You can find many pieces of real estate that could screw you over. But to me, it's difficult. If you do even a decent amount of research, you don't even have to really do that much. You do a decent amount of research, you can find a pretty good piece of property that somebody is willing to rent out, right? So my biggest piece of advice to anyone, no matter how young you are, is to go out there and do it, right? Everyone, I mean, not everyone, but most people think, I just helped my sister. I ended up seeing my sister in October for like an early Thanksgiving at my mom's house. And she asked me about all this stuff. And basically we talked about it, and now she's working on buying her first townhouse in Somerville or Greenville, South Carolina, where she lives, with an FHA loan. I mean, doing the whole thing. She's going to live there for a year. I mean, just doing the whole thing and rent it out after that. And she's almost 40. So whether you're 20 years old or you're 40 or 50, just go do it, man. Don't be too scared. Almost anything can be fixed. You know what I'm saying? If you do a decent amount of research and you even reach out to a couple people, do worst case scenario for everything. So if you see a house, do worst case scenario, right? Assume that you won't get paid for 3 months out of the year. Assume that you're going to have $1,000 water heater break every year. And if you are still making even $1 after that year, it's worth it, man. If you're still cash flowing, it's worth it, right? Because equity is a huge thing, right? So when I bought my house in New York, it's worth basically, so I've had it for 4 years now. It's worth basically $50,000 more than it was when I bought it. So hypothetically, if since day one that I started renting it out, even if I'd only charged the mortgage, I could potentially make like $40,000 to $50,000 right now, by refinancing or selling or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's almost difficult if you just jump into it and you do 25% of research. It's almost difficult for you to not be able to at least succeed or come away with being smarter, being better with it, knowing what you'll do better the next time, and being able to be successful from it. So just jump into it. You know, you can ask a couple people. I mean, I pretty much learned everything on my own. I did everything on my own. Like I said, none of my friends were into real estate. You know, everyone always was like, real estate's dumb. Dude, I'll still talk to my dad. I just told him a couple weeks ago, hey, I'm looking at buying a house in South Carolina. He's like, why are you buying these houses? He's like, why are you buying so many houses? But my dad is also somebody who's never owned a house, right? I mean, he worked the same job since he was like 18 to like 55 years old. Like, you know, he was somebody where he was cool with just kind of being complacent. And, you know, I tell him like, I just want to keep building. I want to keep earning a lot more money, and I want to keep being able to get that passive income.
Absolutely.
So, you know, not everyone understands that, but if you just jump into it, man, it's scary as shit. Don't get me wrong. But you'll be successful. You know, if you do just even a little bit amount of research, it's hard not to be successful in the business.
All right. Well, that's good to hear, because I was scared shitless. Talking to you made it a lot better. So I'm sure everybody who's listening to this is going to feel the same way. You honestly, you dumbed it down to the point where like, it sounds like everything that anyone I know that's worried about doing this is just, it's made up in their head, because it's such a big, in society, it's like, oh, you buy your first house, that's a huge deal. But in reality, it's like, no, it's just another form of income. And that's it. It's just like opening a business.
It's just like opening a business. And if you think about it, I mean, if you ask any of your friends, I'm sure tons of them have a 401k, right? That they probably put in their company. Their company might match, right? 3% or 6% or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have 5 or even 10 grand sitting in that 401k, right? I tell everyone, so I don't have a 401k. I don't have any of that stuff. I tell everyone, take that 10 grand out of your 401k. You'll pay the tax on it, which is usually 20%. So you'll pay $1,000 to $1,500 to $2,000 on it. So you'll get $8,000 still. Take that, put it into a house, and start earning $300 a month or $200 a month. It's a lot more than your 401k is earning. I can almost guarantee that the interest that your 401k is earning.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
probably earning 0.2 to 0.3% in your 401k versus $200 a month on an $8,000 loan is, I don't know, 4%, 5%.
Right. Exactly. So you're making more doing it that way. And that's another thing too, is a lot of people in my life they've preached 401ks, Roth IRAs, and there are benefits. I mean,
Yep.
the Roth IRA, there are some benefits, but in the grand scheme of things with the Roth IRA, you're basing your income on how the stock market is doing essentially. And then in a 401k, you're basing it on whatever your company is going to match, if that. So it's like in this
Yep.
scenario with what you got going on, it's like you're guaranteed X amount of money monthly. And then that money's building towards your next venture that you're going to be doing in the real estate investment game, where you're going to be making that again, times 2, times 3, times 4, and you're going to keep going. And
Right.
then, like you said, once you get to that, what your goal is in the near future, 10, 15 units, you're golden. You already know all the fuck ups.
Yep.
You already know what you got to do. And at this point, it's just plug and play.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And obviously I'm not a financial advisor, but anyone who ever asks me, I tell them, the money you put into your Roth, right, or your 401k, you usually can't even touch it till you're 60 or 62 and a half now for most companies.
Right.
Yeah, I think most companies now are 62 and a half. So without getting penalized. So I just took my 401k
Which
out
is old as
from my
shit.
company that I used to work with. That's old as shit, man. Like, what am I going to do with that much money at 62 and a half? Like, why couldn't I have invested that money for the last 40 years
Right.
and have enough passive income where it's more than $500,000 in a 401k?
Right.
I could have
Exactly.
taken the $200 that somebody puts into a 401k a month. I could have just taken that, saved it myself, and bought 100 properties in the next 40 years.
Right. Exactly.
That's kind of how I look at it. For the government to penalize you for taking your own money out that you worked for, especially after taxing it. Not only do they tax it, and then they're going to say, well, since you took it out before the age of 60, even though you work for this money, give us 10% of it on top of the 15% tax you just paid.
Yeah.
Right. It's crazy. So I just took my 401k out to pay for this duplex, and I have to do that in my taxes this year. Right. And it's just crazy to me. Like, not only am I paying a pre-withdrawal penalty on top of the tax that I'm paying and that I've worked for, like, it's not like this money was like free or given to me. Like, I literally worked for this money,
Right.
and I'm getting penalized for using it.
Exactly.
It just really blows my mind. But I mean, I was the same way. My parents told me, just save until you're 60, retire, and then spend $800 a month. Your home will be paid for, whatever. And it's like, one, I might not even live to 60. So if I put $100,000 away and I'm 60 and I don't get that shit, I'm gonna be pretty pissed in the grave, right? But so I'm gonna use the money now, and I'm gonna just better myself in the future. And I tell a lot of people that, but tons of people are still in the same mindset, and they just think I'm crazy. And they're like, well, you'll never have a retirement. You'll be working when you're 60. And I'm gonna be having passive income sitting on a beach making $10, $20, $30, $40,000 a month from doing nothing.
Right. Exactly.
So,
and that's the thing, people don't realize that. And my biggest complaint, I guess, or my biggest, like, the reason why I don't really fuck with the 401k, the Roth IRA, is because, like you said, you can't pull it till you're 60, 62 years old. And I want the money when I'm able to actually fucking use it. When I'm 60 years old, what am I going to do? I'm literally only going to be able to sit on a beach. Now, if I have it, I can go, I could party, I can go travel, I could do all that shit. When I'm 60 years old, I might not even be able to walk.
Yeah, exactly, man. And, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I mean, my dad, he is, I think he's 60 now. With his 401k or whatever he had through his company, he was able to withdraw it at 57, I think. But my dad had a stroke at 55. So my dad can't ever play golf again. Like, you know what I'm saying? He doesn't travel like that. Like, so you just worked for the last 35 years and now you just kind of sit at home chilling. Like, it's just crazy to me. Like, why wouldn't you rather have that money now travel when you're 25, 26, 27. I mean, I travel all the time, right? I go to a lot of places, man. I love it. I love traveling. I love seeing new places. Like, do that stuff now. In worst case scenario,
Exactly.
you know, even if you only have a little bit of passive income by the time you're 50 or 60, which, you know, most people like you and I are entrepreneurs who are in real estate. By the time you're 60, you have enough passive income where you don't have to work. But worst case scenario, shit, if I got to work when I'm 65, a couple nights a week, then fuck it, I'll do it. You know, I myself know that I won't be there because I know the person I am. And I know I'll have enough properties by then, enough passive income. But
Exactly.
even worst case scenario, I'd rather work at fucking 65 3 nights a week than work my ass off 6 days a week now just to sit at home when I'm 65, you know?
Exactly. No, you're 100% right. So before we end things off, what would you like for the listeners? What would you say is the moral, the thing you're really trying to hammer home for these people listening?
Oh man, that's tough. The one thing. Well, now that we're talking about 401ks, I really want to hammer. Don't do 401ks, but man, if I had to hammer one thing, it's passive income. That doesn't necessarily just mean real estate. So I want to broaden it to find whatever passive income suits your lifestyle, you know, your needs, whatever it might be. Find passive income that you can do, right? Tons of stuff going on right now with online shopping, where you can basically you can own the inventory for like Walmart or Amazon. It's kind of the most simple way to put it, and basically make money. And you only work a few hours a week. There's passive income with, dude, I was looking at getting into ATMs, vending machines. It's not necessarily completely passive because, yeah, you have to go refill it. But to me, working 10 hours a week to make money is passive to me, right? So
100%.
Find passive income. You know, I obviously prefer real estate. I just love real estate. I just pretty much finished up finishing my real estate course so I can take my exam and get my license. But real estate's just always been super interesting to me, right? But find passive income that suits your lifestyle, suits what you want to do with your life and how much money you want to make. And if that's real estate, it's an easy way to do it. You don't have to be hands-on. I mean, you can hire somebody for everything you need, right? If you jump into real estate, there's people you can pay, Mike, as a property manager, and you don't even have to deal with the tenants, right? Getting the tenants in or anything. You're gonna pay them 10%. So you're gonna pay them $100 a month or $130 a month. But you have almost no hands in it at all, other than receiving the money, and then you have to approve some big expenses if the water heater goes, right?
Right.
So real estate, you can be completely hands off. Me, I want to make that extra $100 a month so I can get $1,200 more a year. So I do a lot more myself. But you can be completely hands off even with your first property. And real estate's not going anywhere, right? So if I tell anyone, the stock market is going to crash at some point, right? Everything's going to go up and down. You never know necessarily when. Real estate will never go anywhere. Grant Cardone talks about this a lot. Unless there's Armageddon and nukes get thrown over here, the real estate will literally always be there.
Yeah.
It's something physical that will always be there. There's 2 things or 3 things in this world people need: somewhere to live, something to eat, something to drink, right? So
exactly.
With one of those things being a need that people need, real estate's not going anywhere. Even if the housing market crashes, I can guarantee I can still rent out my properties to at least make the mortgage.
Right. Exactly.
So I mean, worst case scenario, I'm still making money off the equity of the house. So passive income. If there's anything I really want to get across to people, passive income, it's the way to go. It ensures that you don't work for the rest of your life. I'm hoping to get at least 3 more properties in the next 2 to 3 years, on top of the one that I'm trying to buy in South Carolina. And then after that, I'm technically, in my eyes, going to have enough passive income where if I wanted to never work again, I could live off that.
Really?
Now I won't be able to live as bougie as I want to now. So I need a lot more properties.
Right.
But I could, or hypothetically, if I needed to live off of $3 or $4 grand a month, I'll be able to do that in a few years. and that's really what I'm looking for, is that stable where I don't want to depend on a job or a boss, an employer, anything like that. I want to be able to kind of tell myself, hey, if I don't need this job, then I don't need it. Right. So
Yeah, absolutely.
and passive income is the way people are going to get there. So
no, you're 100% right. That's the mentality. That's my mentality too. Me being where I am right now made me realize, like, if I was to, for whatever reason, lose my job, I'd be absolutely fucked in the current scenario that I am. Yep. And that is, when you actually genuinely go through that, that is the scariest shit. And that is the most eye-opening shit, to realize, like, I really don't have anything at all going on that can help save me in case this shit goes down.
Yep. That's one of the scariest things, that we can see for ourselves, is if I lose my job, my whole family's screwed, my kids are screwed or whatever. And obviously most jobs have us like that, right? They know, well, this person can't go anywhere because I literally own their life. They're going to come in and work 6 days a week. They're going to work mornings or close. They're going to do whatever I ask them to.
Exactly.
They need me. And I mean, that's how most employers are, and that's a business. So, and hopefully one day I get to that level where I can look down at people and be like, you have to do whatever I say.
That's the fucking dream, man.
Exactly. Yep, for sure, man.
So I want to thank you for jumping on today. You definitely dropped a shit ton of gems today, so I appreciate that thoroughly. I want everybody listening to make sure to subscribe to the channel, comment, like the video, all of that. And we'll be back next week with another amazing episode here on In Progress.